I never thought I'd catch her like this, not in a million years. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend away at the cabin, just me and her, something to escape the city's noise for a couple of days. But I guess I should have seen the signs. She'd been acting distant for weeks, distracted even when we were together. I'd catch her glancing at her phone more than usual, her laughter sometimes filtered through a text, quick and secretive. Still, I told myself she was just busy or maybe stressed about work. That Saturday, I left early in the morning, packed with a sense of anticipation. I was excited about the peaceful woods, a break from the chaos of our life. I told her I'd be back Sunday evening. She kissed me goodbye, her lips cold and quick, like she wanted to get rid of me fast. I brushed it off. I figured she'd be fine, maybe even relieved to have some space, but I should have known better. When I returned Sunday night, the cabin was dead silent. The lights were off, the car gone. That was weird, but not entirely unexpected. Maybe she'd gone out with friends. I unlocked the door, expecting to find her waiting with a smile, maybe some snacks. Instead, I felt this strange, heavy silence pressing against me. I stepped inside, and immediately something caught my eye. On the table, there was a crumpled tissue. Not just a used tissue, this one looked recently used, and it sat right next to her phone. My stomach turned. I reached for her phone, heart pounding a little faster. I needed to see. I unlocked it without thinking. Her passcode was always easy enough to guess, but now I was doing it on instinct, like I already knew what I'd find. The screen lit up, and immediately I saw a string of messages, not just silly texts or casual banter. These were dirty, intimate secrets, conversations that made my skin crawl. They mentioned plans, sneaky meetings at the cabin, and wait, the name, Jake. That's her brother's name. My hands went cold, my brother. She'd been cheating on me with my own brother, right there in the same cabin where I'd trusted her. My mind spun. How long had this been going on? Why did I never see the signs? I looked closer, and that's when I found the photos. Hidden in a folder she'd tucked away, probably thinking I'd never find them, were pictures of her and Jake, kissing, touching, caught in moments that made my stomach knot tighter than a tourniquet. I flicked through the images. Her hair was messy, lips parted, her skin glowing in the dim light, like she was trying to seduce him over the camera. It was raw, real, and absolutely unforgivable. I could feel my fists clench. My jaw tightened so hard I thought I might crack my teeth. I didn't want to cry, but my eyes stung, and I felt this heat rising from my gut, a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I hadn't even noticed she'd come home early from wherever she'd gone. She was standing behind me, silent, watching me stare at her phone with that guilty, defeated look. When she saw me, she froze. "I can't believe you did this," I said, voice trembling. "With my brother, how long has this been going on? Tell me." My voice cracked, but I kept my tone steady, ice cold. She hesitated, then finally whispered, "It was just a mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "A mistake?" I echoed, voice thick with contempt. "That's all you have? How many times, huh? How many lies? How many secret meetings behind my back?" She looked down, tears pooling in her eyes. "I swear I didn't want you to find out like this. It just happened. I don't know how." I cut her off. "You don't know how. No, what you don't realize is that I do. I see every message, every photo. You've been lying to my face for months. And my own brother, how could you?" Her words died in her throat. I'd never felt this betrayed in my life, not like this. My fists clenched so tightly that my nails cut into my palms. I needed space, clarity, before I did something I'd regret. I turned away, took a deep breath, and looked at her one last time. "You've crossed a line I can't come back from. Don't try to contact me. Don't come near me. I need to think." With that, I grabbed my keys and walked out into the dark night, leaving her standing there, silent. As I got into my car, the engine roared to life, and I knew everything was about to change. I didn't know exactly what I'd do next, but I knew I had to come up with a plan, something that would hit her where it hurts most. She thought she could cheat, lie, and hide. Well, I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without consequences. What I didn't expect was how easy it would be to figure out her next move. I already had a plan brewing, but the question now was, how far was I willing to go? I spent the next few days trying to process what I'd found, but honestly I was barely holding it together. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Jake, lips pressed together in those secret photos. My stomach churned, a mixture of anger and heartbreak that refused to fade. I couldn't sleep, kept waking up at random hours, replaying that scene, her standing there, crying, hiding her phone like it was some kind of treasure she was protecting. I kept asking myself, what now? How do I fix this, or do I even want to? The answer was complicated. On one hand, I was furious, humiliated. On the other, I felt betrayed so deeply that I questioned everything. Could I even trust her anymore? If she was capable of lying for months, what else was she hiding? And my brother, how could I face him? How could I trust him again? The very foundation of my family had cracked wide open. I had to plan carefully. I wasn't about to blow up my life on a whim. I needed evidence, something airtight. I wanted her to see I wasn't just angry, I was calculating. In that dark, restless state, I remembered her phone. That folder with the photos, what if there was more? I needed to dig deeper. I spent hours scrolling through her messages, her hidden apps, and her cloud backups. I made sure to keep a record of everything just in case I needed it later. One thing became clear. She was hiding more than just the photos. There were messages from her friends, plans she'd made that she didn't want me to see. I could tell she had been lying about where she'd been. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the room, but it didn't mask the underlying lie. No, she didn't just cheat. She lied about everything. That realization made my stomach turn again, but it also sharpened my resolve. I needed leverage. I needed her to pay, not just with words or tears, but in a way that would shake her to her core. So I started thinking about what would hurt her most, something she loved, something she'd never expect. Her social media accounts, her phone, her privacy, these were my tools now. I knew her passwords, her routines. It was time to set the stage. I managed to access her email account, and what I found there confirmed my fears. She'd been planning to meet Jake again next weekend, even after I left. She sent him messages about keeping everything secret, about their next encounter, and even plans for a getaway. It was like reading a script of betrayal. My blood boiled. I realized her deception wasn't stopping, it was escalating. I also found a little detail that made my skin crawl, a handwritten note she kept in her purse, detailing her feelings, her guilt, and her secret promises to Jake. She'd written, "I don't want to hurt him, but I can't stop. I love him, but I love him too much to let this go on forever." That was her truth, buried deep beneath the lies. I looked at the clock. It was late, but I wasn't tired. I felt my heartbeat pounding in my head. I had everything I needed now. The evidence was solid, irrefutable. Just the thought of confronting her with all of this made my stomach tighten. But I knew I had to do it on my terms, with a plan, not out of anger alone, but with precision. I sat there, drafting what I was going to say. I wanted her to see I wasn't just some cuckolded fool. She'd pushed me to the edge, and now I was ready to make her regret it. I decided that I'd give her a chance to come clean first, to tell me everything. Then I'd turn the tables. She thought she was in control, snuggling up to her brother behind my back. That's when I realized I needed to be the one pulling the strings. The next step was obvious. I'd arrange for her to come home, acting normal while I had everything in place. I'd record her when she didn't know. I'd confront her with the evidence and see how she'd react, because I knew the truth. She was a liar, a cheat, and she'd underestimated me. I was going to make her pay, not with threats or shouting. No, I had something better planned. I wanted her to understand that her betrayal was not just a mistake, but a breach so deep that there was no return. In the quiet darkness of my apartment, I felt that familiar fire ignite. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I was done being the fool who trusted blindly. She pushed me to the edge, and now I was ready to push back hard. The game was on, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. She was going to regret ever crossing that line. The question was, how much was I willing to risk to make her understand? I looked around my apartment, feeling the weight of all this chaos settle over me. The plan was clear now. All I needed was the moment when I'd finally show her that her secrets had a price, and I was the one who was going to collect it. I had the evidence, the plan, and a cold determination that wouldn't let me back down. Now, I just had to wait for her to come home. Next, I'll tell you how I executed the plan and what happened when everything finally came crashing down. A few days passed, and I stayed on edge, walking that thin line between patience and impatience. Every noise outside made my stomach tight, waiting for her to come home, for her to slip up, for that moment where everything would finally explode. I kept everything ready. My phone recording, the folder with evidence, the plan in my head. It was like I'd turned into a predator, stalking my own life, waiting for the perfect strike. That night I knew she'd be coming back late. She told me she was working late, supposed to meet some friends. I watched the clock tick past 10 p.m., then 11, then 11:30. When I heard the key turn in the lock, my pulse jumped. I moved to the living room, pretending to be casual, but my heart was pounding so loud I was sure she'd hear it. She entered quietly, her face tired but somehow still tense, like she was hiding something. I greeted her with a calm I didn't feel. "Hey, long night." "Yeah," she said, dropping her purse on the table. Her voice sounded strained. I kept my eyes locked on her, feeling that familiar fire simmering just beneath the surface. "I've been waiting for you," I said softly, but with enough edge to make her freeze a little. "I have a lot to say about us." I paused, watching her eyes flicker with apprehension. "You've been lying to me. You've been hiding things." Her face crumpled slightly, but she didn't speak right away. I saw her glance at her phone, maybe thinking about grabbing it, but I stepped forward. "Don't bother, I already saw everything. The messages, the photos, the plans you've been making with Jake." Her eyes widened and her breath hitched. "You found out?" "Yeah, I did," I said, voice low but steady. "You thought you could keep it secret, but I've got enough to end this now. You're a liar, a cheat, and I want to know, how long has this been going on?" She looked down, her face white as a sheet. "It's not what you think. I didn't mean for it to get this far. It just happened." "I swear." "Just happened," I echoed, voice thick with disbelief. "You were planning to meet him again tomorrow, weren't you?" She nodded slowly, tears starting to pool in her eyes. "I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't stop myself. It was a mistake, I swear." I felt my fists tighten again. "A mistake? You've been lying for months, sneaking around, hiding your phone. How does that add up to a mistake?" She didn't answer, just stared at the floor, trembling. I took a deep breath. Honestly, I hadn't expected her to break so easily. But I knew I needed more than just her guilt. I needed her to see she'd lost control completely. "Look," I said, voice cold now, "you think I'm just going to walk away and forgive this? No, I've got a plan. One that's going to make you regret ever thinking you could cheat on me with my own brother." Her eyes widened again, confusion and fear flashing across her face. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see," I said. "You messed with the wrong person. I've recorded everything. I've got the evidence that proves you lied, cheated, and planned to keep this going, and I'm not letting you get away with it." She looked like she wanted to protest, to beg, but I cut her off. "You've crossed a line I can't ignore, and the worst part, you think you're in control, that you're the one who's going to decide what happens next. Well, that's over now. I'm about to show you that I'm the one who holds all the power." I reached into my pocket, pulling out the phone to play the recordings I'd made. The room fell silent, apart from the faint hum of my voice replaying her own words. Her face went pale when she heard her voice admitting to the planned meeting, the secret messages, the guilt in her tone. She saw her own words, her own betrayal come alive on the screen. "Do you see this?" I asked, voice sharp. "This is what you've been hiding, and now I'm going to decide what happens next." Her shoulders trembled as tears streamed down her face. She looked helpless, defeated. I knew I had her right where I wanted her, completely exposed, unable to deny the truth anymore. "Listen," I said, voice firm, "I've given you chances, but enough's enough. I'm done. I don't want to see you or hear from you again. I'm taking everything I need to move on, and then I'll be gone, and you're going to regret this for the rest of your life." I pulled a bag from behind the couch, tossing in a few essentials, clothes, my documents. I wanted her to see I was serious. "Here, what's happening," I told her. "In the morning, you're going to pack up your things and leave. I'll hand over the keys. I'm done. This chapter is closed." Her voice broke as she whispered, "Please don't do this." I looked her dead in the eye. "You brought this on yourself. You wanted to cheat, to lie, to betray me. Now I'm going to make sure you never forget it." As I turned to walk out the door, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd finally taken control. Whether I'd win or lose in the long run, I knew one thing for sure: I was done being the fool. Next, I'll tell you how I sealed this whole thing and what came after. That morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in days. The plan was set and I was ready to execute it. I'd kept my cool all night, but now the real work began. I knew she'd be waking up soon, probably trying to pretend everything was normal. I didn't want that. I wanted her to see I was serious, completely serious, and that I was finally taking back control. I went to the kitchen, made myself a coffee, and watched the clock. She finally stirred around 8 a.m., stretching like she didn't have a care in the world. As soon as she got up, I blocked her path. "We need to talk," I said, voice calm but hard. She looked at me with a mix of fear and confusion. "What's going on?" "You know exactly what's going on," I said, pulling out the folder of evidence and my phone. "I've been patient, but enough is enough. It's time to end this." Her face paled. "You found out?" "Yeah," I said. "And I've got everything on tape, every message, every photo. You played with fire and now you're going to get burned." Her hands trembled as she reached out. "Please, I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you." "You love me," I shot back, voice rising. "That's rich coming from someone who's been sneaking around behind my back for months with my own brother. You want me to believe that?" She broke down, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's not what it looks like. I was stupid, I was hurt, and I thought maybe, I don't know, I didn't want to lose everything." "Well, you're about to," I said, voice cold. "Because I'm done, I've packed your things, you're leaving today, it's over." She gasped. "You're kicking me out." "Exactly," I said, voice hardening. "And I won't have you near me or my family again. You crossed a line I can't come back from. Just pack up your stuff and leave and don't contact me again." She looked stunned, struggling to speak. And that's when I handed her the phone, showing her the recorded conversations, the photos, everything. Her eyes widened in horror. "You recorded all this?" "Yeah," I said. "I wanted proof. I knew you lied and I tried to hide, and I wanted to be ready for this moment." Her shoulders sagged. "I didn't want it to come to this. I was confused." "Confused?" I spat. "No, you knew exactly what you were doing, and now you're going to pay for it." I watched her struggle, then turned away. "Get your things and I'll help you pack. When you're done, you leave and don't come back. I'm done being played." She nodded weakly, tears still falling. I felt a strange mixture of relief and disgust. I'd finally done it. I'd taken back my power, even if it hurt like hell. I'd won the battle, but I knew the war wasn't over, not yet. I headed to the door, grabbing the box I'd prepared. "Here's the key," I said, holding it out. "Give it to whoever you want, but I don't want to see you around here again." She snatched the keys, whispering, "I'm sorry," as if that could undo everything. I handed her the last bag of her clothes. "Goodbye," I said simply, and then I walked out, closing the door behind me. The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't look back. I just got into my car, feeling the weight lift off my chest. For the first time in days, I could breathe. But I knew this wasn't the end. I'd have to deal with the fallout, the questions, the hurt. Still, I'd taken control of my life again. That was enough for now. As I drove away from the cabin, I kept thinking about one thing. I had finally cut the cord. There's no going back from betrayal like that. Trust, gone. Love, shattered. But I'd survive, and I'd rebuild. Next, I'll tell you what happened when I finally faced the fallout, what she did, how my family reacted, and what I learned from all of it. The days that followed were a blur of messy emotions and awkward silences. I stayed away from my phone most of the time, trying to keep my head clear, but eventually the inevitable happened. She reached out. At first, it was just a few texts, apologetic and pleading. Then it turned into long calls, desperate and tearful, trying to convince me that she loved me, that she'd changed, that she'd do anything to fix this. I didn't want to hear it. I felt sick every time I saw her name pop up. But part of me, stubborn, angry, needed to hear her say it just to make sure I wasn't imagining everything. I responded sparingly, keeping the door slightly cracked but never fully opening it again. I told her I needed time, space, that I'd think about things. I wasn't ready to forgive, and honestly, I didn't see how I could. Meanwhile, my family found out. I told my brother I knew. The shock, the guilt, and the shame that hit him. God, I'd never seen him look so broken. We had a long, painful talk. He apologized over and over, his voice thick with regret. "Man, I didn't know she was capable of this," he said, avoiding my gaze. "I screwed up. I never wanted to hurt you. I was raw but firm. You're my brother. You messed up, and I get it. But you don't get to be part of this anymore. I don't want to see or hear from you until you can face what you did." He nodded silently, a haunted look in his eyes. That was the last I heard from him for a while. I couldn't handle the thought of him being around my ex, knowing what had happened. I felt betrayed by everyone I loved, but I also knew I had to keep my distance, protect myself from more pain. My ex kept trying to reach me, but I refused to answer. I knew she wanted to apologize, maybe even beg, but I wasn't ready. Each message felt like a punch to the stomach. I kept telling myself it wasn't about her anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. I couldn't let her manipulate me again. One day, I decided I needed a definitive move, a clean break. I went to the bank, pulled out some money, and started sorting through my legal options. Honestly, I wasn't interested in dragging this out in court. I just wanted my peace, my space. But I also knew I couldn't let her walk all over me, not after what she'd done. So I drafted a formal separation agreement. Nothing fancy, just enough to lay out that we were finished, that she wasn't to contact me, and that I wanted no part of her life anymore. I sent it with a note: "This is over, don't bother trying to contact me again." I refused to give her the satisfaction of an emotional response. I just wanted her to see that I was done. The final blow came a few days later when I handed over the keys to the apartment. I packed my stuff, left everything behind, and walked away. I didn't even look back. It felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown, painful but necessary. I wanted to start fresh, with no ties to her or my betrayal. That night I slept better than I had in months. The weight was finally off my shoulders, but the scars remained. My trust was shattered. I kept looking at my phone, expecting her to pop up to say she was sorry again. But I knew that wasn't coming. I had to accept that the only way forward was to accept what had happened, learn from it, and move on. Looking back now, I realize that trust, real trust, can be so fragile. When it breaks, it's like shattering glass. You can glue it back together, but it's never quite the same. I learned that the hard way, and I also learned that revenge is about getting even. It's about reclaiming your power and setting boundaries so you don't get hurt again. So if you're in a similar boat, here's my advice. Cut out the toxic people, gather your evidence if you need to, and don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living your life without them. You deserve that much, more than they ever gave you. It's been a few weeks since I officially cut her out of my life. Honestly, I don't miss the chaos or the lies. At first, every day felt like walking through fog. The pain was sharp, like a constant ache deep inside, but slowly I started to breathe again. I found myself sleeping better, eating more regularly, and even rediscovering parts of myself I'd forgotten in the chaos of betrayal. What's surprising, though, is how much clarity comes with distance. I used to think love meant unconditional forgiveness. Now I see it's about protecting yourself, knowing when to walk away, even if it hurts. I learned that sometimes loyalty to yourself is more important than sticking around for a false sense of loyalty from others. I finally took the steps I'd been putting off. I handed over the keys, changed my number, and started therapy. I needed to untangle the mess in my head, face the anger I'd buried, and figure out how to trust again if I ever could. Every day is still a challenge, but I'm learning to listen to myself, to trust my instincts, and to rebuild my confidence. Looking back, I realize I was naive to think I could fix everything with forgiveness or patience. The truth is, some betrayals cut so deep that they can't be repaired. Not by me, at least. And I don't regret choosing myself over someone who so easily lied and cheated. It's a hard lesson, but it's one I needed. The one thing I tell everyone who might be going through something similar is this: trust is fragile. Once it's broken, it's like a mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. You can try to glue it back, but it's never the same. Protect yourself. Don't ignore the signs. And when it's time, walk away. Your peace is worth more than any apology or regret. I don't pretend I've forgotten everything. The scars are still there, faint but present. But I've learned that pain fades with time, and so does anger if you let it. I'm not the same person I was before, and honestly, I don't want to be. I want to be stronger, wiser, more cautious. For now, I'm focusing on me. I've started a new job, made some new friends, and most importantly, I've learned how to trust myself again, something I'd lost in all the chaos. The betrayal was brutal, but it also freed me from a relationship built on lies. So, if you're reading this and going through your own heartbreak, know this: you're not alone. It hurts now, but it won't hurt forever. You'll learn, you'll heal, and you'll come out stronger. Sometimes the only way to truly move on is to cut the cord and walk away. That's what I did, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Life is too short to waste it on people who don't value you. Trust your gut, stand firm, and never forget your worth. No matter how dark it seems, there's always a dawn waiting. And in time, you'll see that even the deepest wounds can become the scars that make you stronger.